Hello, good afternoon. You might be able to tell from my accent that I'm from the UK, from London, so I hope you'll be willing to listen to me in English for some time. I think it will be much safer for both of us. So big data is a phrase that's used regularly in business. And actually, people are becoming very reluctant to make decisions without using big data. So what we've completed is a survey, and we want to share some of the findings of that survey with you. And we believe that you can use the data to fill the gap of the skills required in the global labor market. My name's Mike Booker. I'm Managing Director of the Network Organization. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me tell you quickly what I'm going to cover today. I want to very briefly explain to you what the Network Organization is and how we work with Skywalker here in Greece. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the global perspective of the labor market and about the skills gap that's significantly increasing at the moment. And then I'd like to tell you about the groundbreaking research. But ignoring all of that stuff, there are going to be 4 facts for Greece that I think are really important, and I would welcome you to listen to them. And I very much hope you find it interesting. So back in 2002, 13 years ago, we decided to found the Network Organization. It's a collaboration of the world's leading jobs websites, just like Skywalker, but we're covering many, many countries abroad. So if you have needs internationally or you wish to attract talent internationally, you can manage this conveniently and locally via Skywalker. To use Stephen Hawking's phrase, a brief history of time, I just wanted to give you a little perspective as how we've developed and grown. So at the top of the slide, you'll see the network organization, the growth in terms of the members that we have and the countries we cover. Then, very importantly, the reason that I'm here today to talk about the Global Talent Survey, and then just some other notes below. So back in 2002, in the month of October, we founded our organization. We were covering some European countries. We had 6 member organizations covering 18 countries. About 1 year later, you'll probably remember the name of FaceMash. FaceMash became Facebook in 2003, the same year of the launch of LinkedIn and the iTunes Store. By 2005, we had 15 members covering 37 European countries, and it was going quite well. The following year, we decided to launch the first wave of research of the Global Talent Study. We actually ended up getting around 18,000 responses from active job seekers in a number of European countries, and we published a book of about 300 pages, not very revolutionary for a digital company. But by 2009, we were already really covering the world, covering the most important economies, and companies were finding it easier to work with us because we had the coverage that they needed. And by this time, we were covering 70 countries worldwide. We decided to run the Global Talent Survey again. With the second wave, we generated more than 66,000 responses worldwide, and we published a white paper. By 2011, we were covering 119 countries worldwide, and we decided to run the third wave of the survey, and we built a data tool so that recruiters, HR, and company people could access the data and start to understand and interpret the information and what it meant to their country and their organization and industry. So where does that leave us today? We have 56 independent companies, but we're working together with one piece of technology that we've developed. We're covering 132 countries worldwide. And of course, today, the most important member that we have is Skywalker in Greece, without doubt. So I want to talk to you about wave 4 of this survey. But very quickly, I just want to give you some numbers to see how many active job seekers we're engaging with. So I told you how many countries we cover, but equally, we have more combined global traffic than Amazon. We have more than 200 million unique visitors every month visiting the websites in different countries. On top of that, if you wanted to look at the database of CVs that we have, if we were a country, we would be equally the 3rd largest country of the world with 317 million, roughly 1/3 of a billion CVs, which is the same size as the population of the United States. But let's talk about the skills gap. So I don't know whether you're familiar with these population pyramids, but I personally love them. Even my wife understands what they are. If you look at the world's population, so 7.3 billion people, and you have the gender and age demographics in front of you. So on the left, you have men by age distribution, and on the right, you have women. So at the bottom of the screen, you will see it's 0, being born, and we know this data is correct because these people are born already. And at the top of the screen, it's 100 years old. But when you start looking into the population of different countries, the demographic development is starkly different. It's significantly different. And actually, this is an area that I think is really positive for Greece. If you look at the birth rate of Greece over the last decade, it hasn't really declined like all of the other countries have. So it's gone from about 9.8 births per thousand down to around 9. So you're still having enough children coming through the education system and coming into the labour market domestically, which I think is really important. And the other fact is the average age of your population is 43 years old, which is a good position to be in. If you compare this to Germany, for example, with a population of 83 million, they're in a significant skills gap in Germany at the moment. They have a heavily declining population. They have an aging workforce. The average age is 48, which is nearly as old as the workforce in Monaco. And I can't believe many people in Monaco really need to work. But looking at Germany and the skills gap that they have, they're having to find innovative ways to get people to go to the country, to work in the country and migrate for work so that they can continue to develop their GDP and grow the strong export market that they've grown. With the UAE, it's a slightly different picture. The average age of the entire population in the Emirates is 30 years old, but it's heavily drawn by the very large number of people working in construction and hospitality and architecture and design that are in the cities of Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Actually, I was recently, exactly 1 month ago, I was on holiday with my family in Dubai, and even my young children noticed that there were many people from many parts of the world that were working there in the hotels and around the places we visited. Looking slightly further afield and just very quickly in Japan, huge country in terms of its powerful economy, G8 economy and 126 million population. Again, they have exactly the same situation as Germany. The average age of the population is 47 years and the birth rate is heavily in decline. There are more people retiring in Germany and Japan every day than there are people entering the labour market, and this is a situation that they need to resolve. Russia, again, 142 million population, and average age is much lower, it's 39 years. But you see here that the life expectancy for men is far, far lower than it is for women, so they have some other complications. And I was just speaking to my counterpart, the CEO of Naukri in India, so 1.28 billion people as a population with an average age of only 27 years. You would think it's really the perfect storm that they have for recruiting people, but still in India, I was astonished. I was talking to this guy, he founded the very first internet business in the whole of India, our partner's Naukri, which means job. And Naukri said that today there are more than 3 million open IT vacancies in India. This is incredible and something they really need to do something about, because 20 years ago, companies started outsourcing technology and IT projects to companies in India, and they're unable to sustain even with their own population. And very few people in the grand scheme are willing to move there for work. So the war for talent. 18 years ago, this famous consultant at McKinsey coined a phrase, the war for talent. What I think is really interesting from an HR perspective is actually it wasn't just the phrase war for talent, but what it really meant. That a company's performance was directly related to their ability to retain talent. To attract, retain, and develop the brightest talent is really coupled with the success of that business. The World Economic Forum ran an event at the end of last year. How do we plug the global skills gap? What can we do? And I did find it quite interesting knowing the dire situation that Germany is coming into, where it doesn't have enough people to fulfill the vacancies that they have. I know in our own businesses in Germany, it's a significant problem to hire the right talent. So what Germany have done is they've looked outside of the EU. I've done it many times for my colleagues that work with me in Brussels and London. I've migrated people from all over the EU to move to another country. It's relatively straightforward and easy to do. When you're trying to migrate people from other countries outside of the EU, it's far more complex. So what Germany have done is they've significantly relaxed their immigration rules to make life easier for themselves. So this picture isn't me. It's a gentleman of the name of Jeff Bezos. He's the founder and CEO of Amazon. Amazon have got some incredible HR practices, and he launched a program last year called Pay to Quit. So they will pay their employees who no longer want to be in the company. They just want them to go as quickly as possible because they want bright talent. They want people who want to develop their career. They want people who want to develop their skills. And they're willing to pay the people that don't want to work hard $2,000 US in their first year, rising to a maximum of $5,000 to leave the company. Because they feel as an HR strategy, it's far more effective for talent and people in Amazon to be on the bus, to be going in line with their business strategy. I have 2 young children, 7 years and 9 years of age. They're both in primary education in the UK. From September, they will both start to learn a new language at school. That language is coding, computer programming. It's becoming the next additional language that's going to be taught to every child in the UK from the age of 5 years old. And I went to an interesting digital leaders conference recently, and we were discussing some interesting facts about how we can make sure that the 11-year-olds, the children entering their secondary education, aren't behind the 5-year-olds that will be able to code and program. So the BBC, it's a large media company in the UK, and Google have got together, and they're going to be giving away 1 million free BlackBerry Pis, these very small microcomputers you can just plug into your television, but you can learn how to code. I think it's a really revolutionary step forward, and I don't know how high on the education agenda for academic institutes coding is here, but I'm already hearing these discussions taking place in the US, in China, and India, where I've recently visited. So this survey, I mentioned earlier, it's quite large. It took a lot of people, a lot of hard work to bring this data to life, but we're delighted to launch it here today in Athens, and we're delighted to give you access to that information. I'd just like to share some of the highlights. As you can imagine, the ways that you can slice this data is huge. We ran the survey of 32 questions in 44 different languages. We had responses from people in 189 countries of the world. That's all but 5 countries of the world. Which is really remarkable, and I really do hope that next time we do this survey we can get coverage in every country. But in terms of the responses, we got more than 200,000 responses. This is an extraordinary data set. We didn't do it alone. We actually engaged with an organization who you probably know, the Boston Consulting Group. They're the world's leading business strategy company, and the guy in the photograph here on the right-hand side, Professor Rainer Strack, helped me. He provided a team of 50 people from his organization to be able to analyze, to interpret, and prepare all of the information that we needed to activate a data tool for you. So we don't need to go into a lot of detail in terms of the coverage in every country, but more than 1,200 people in Greece provided us information. They responded to the survey. More than 1,600 people in Serbia, 3,500 people in France, 6,500 people in the UK, 14,000 people in Mexico, and so on. So what you can do with this data, if you think about the social sciences numbers, that you need a survey of 30 people to be robust data, you can slice this information however you wish to. So you can look at people that wish to come to Greece in the IT sector that's a Java developer with a bachelor's degree and 10 years working experience, and still have really robust information to understand the drivers and motivations behind their mobility. In terms of some very top-level findings, it's really straightforward, but 2 things are changing. People are becoming really willing to work abroad. It's becoming the accepted norm. And I would make an estimate that if you're studying engineering or IT today, that you will, at some point in your career, work abroad. It will be almost a requirement, an expectation. If you're going to develop your skills in your career, you will work abroad at some time. What's also interesting is people are looking to work abroad for less time in general. And I'll talk about some figures for Greece and where I think you have some significant opportunities above some of your other European counterparts a bit later. But in general, we also found some very surprising facts about which countries are willing to migrate, how this is different in different age groups and different populations. So the global average is 2/3 of people. Just over 63% of people are willing to work abroad. These were over 200,000 active job seekers from all around the world. Now, if you look at the countries, it might be a little hard to see, but on the left-hand side, you have all of the countries that are not very willing to work abroad. These are countries like the UK, that has some embarrassment with its language capabilities, the US, Russia, Germany, and Denmark. Greece was interesting because knowing the challenges that are taking place here, I think the media are doing a significant disservice to what's really going on in Greece. But Greece is below the global average. So even in a time of challenge, of economic uncertainty, less than the global average of people want to leave Greece. There's a huge feeling of national identity, and people don't want to leave Greece unnecessarily for work. Now, hold that thought for one moment. About 55% of people in Greece really wanted to work abroad, which is far lower than the national average. I would now like to tell you the percentage of people in the Netherlands and France that would like to work abroad. 94%. Nearly unanimous. Only Pakistan was above that with 97%. So in putting the European context on what's going on in Greece at the moment, I think that something must be really good here in terms of the working environment, in terms of the atmosphere and the feeling of national identity that people have. But it's not that simple. If you look at the young age group and the older age group, you'll find some absolute opposites as well. So the United States, as an example, only 1/3 of people in the United States would like to work abroad. This data here is showing people that are aged between 21 and 30, and actually more than 60% of American people of that age wish to work abroad, which is exactly the opposite. So young people want to work abroad, older people from the US want to stay at home. If you look at Germany, it's the precise opposite. Young people in Germany probably haven't had to endure any time of difficulty in business, any significant challenges that I can tell you, we've been facing in the Eurozone in general. In the UK, we've also had some significant challenges, and it's exactly the opposite. So older people in Germany wish to migrate abroad, and younger people are not interested at all. They've probably never had to job seek in a market where there aren't enough opportunities for them domestically. But where do they want to go? So when we ask the world which are the countries that you most like to work in, you tend to get two different answers. So one is a country and the other is the city. So if we look first at the countries, in the top 10 countries, it's quite unsurprising, 4 of them are Anglophone. 4 of them are English-speaking countries. So the number 1 is the US, then probably not for the weather, number 2 was the UK, followed by Canada and Australia in 7th place. But if you think about this from the perspective of Greece, we ask people right now, do you want to migrate to Greece? Actually, Greece ranked number 28 out of all of the countries in the world. I would say that's a phenomenal performance. But there's more interesting data. I promised you 4 interesting facts, and I'm going to cover the others in a moment. So when it comes to the cities, London and New York are number 1 and number 2. I'm not massively surprised, actually, although it's almost a bit unsurprising for somebody who works quite a bit of the time in London. It's not surprising because it's very multicultural. There are more than 3 million foreign workers in London, which is exactly the same number there is in New York. So they're already multicultural, they're welcoming to foreign visitors, and we want migrant workers, and we need migrant workers to come to the UK because we have a skills gap to deal with too. But what's changing is what people want. When we first used to run the survey, people wanted to go abroad to earn more money, to give them the prosperity and wealth that they thought suited their family. This is really changing. And actually what I think is interesting for HR is that the number 1 fact for happiness in work that people want worldwide is appreciation for their work. And this is where I think as HR we've got to be more creative in the way that we appreciate our people. Perhaps not thinking only about the annual performance bonus or annual review that we're giving people, but how we can really reward people on a weekly basis or daily basis. And it doesn't need to cost anything at all. So I think capitalizing on this opportunity of appreciating your employees for their work is really worthwhile. You can see here in yellow, the yellow box is the fixed salary. So that only ranked number 8. People aren't really interested in compensation benefits in any way like they were when we used to run this survey in previous years. People want a good working relationship with their colleagues, they want variation in their work, and they want opportunities to do interesting work and have fun along the way. I think that's really heartening to hear that news. What does this mean for Greece? So we asked people, all of the people, who would like to come to Greece. And the interesting thing is nothing really stands out in this data. And I think that's a really good thing, actually. If you look at the number 1 country, the difference of percentage points between the number 1 and the number 10 country on the screen in front of you, there's not too much separation, which I think is excellent. There's some European countries, as you would expect, but there are also some other countries that could fill some of the skills gaps that you have domestically. So the number 1 is Serbia, then Tunisia, Finland, Pakistan, France at number 5, Israel at number 6, the Netherlands at number 7, Mexico at number 8. And bear in mind, so for Mexico, this is 15% of 14,000 people that responded. So it's a significant, robust survey. Huge number of people wish to come to Greece from Mexico. But here's one of the interesting facts. If you look at the people by education level for inward migration to Greece, it tells a slightly different picture. The people that wish to come here are very highly educated. 65% of the people that want to come and work in Greece have a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctorate. And I think from a skills opportunity point of view for Greece, I think that's a very interesting statistic. Secondly, and I found this more astonishing, you may remember I earlier on said that people want to stay abroad for less time. It's the exact opposite for Greece. If you look at this percentage here, 55% of people wish to come to Greece for 5 years or more. And actually the predominant statistic of that number, 35% of people want to be here for more than 10 years. And that is something that I think you can build businesses and future development upon. We also asked Greek people where they would like to move to. There are a lot of European countries in here, so I'll just very quickly run through them. The UK, Switzerland, that's very well regarded by the standard of living it has. The US, Germany, France, Sweden, Italy, Canada, Cyprus, and again Mexico. So I was not previously aware of this relationship for a labour flow point of view between Mexico and Greece, but it's very, very apparent in this very large survey. We asked the Greek people the reasons they would wish to migrate abroad, and actually I can say that nearly all of these statistics are in line with the global picture apart from 2. One, of course, is economic uncertainty and an opportunity that they feel could be recognised elsewhere. But 2 was very interesting. The 5th most important factor was a better healthcare system abroad. And that's an opportunity from a private health point of view. As employers, as recruiters, I think we have an opportunity to do something different in the way that we offer healthcare to people working for our organizations. Again, specifically looking at the data and what it meant to Greek people, again, the willingness to work abroad is actually quite low. I think that's a good thing. You have the ability to retain the talent that you need. Imagine if you're a company in France and 94% of the active job seekers want to leave France. That's really telling you a picture of what's going on there right now, how they're feeling in terms of the economy, but also perhaps something to do with Hollande's tax measures. So from this survey, what are the outputs that you can use? We wanted to create something that we think you'll like. We've created 2 things. On the left-hand side, you'll see a series of reports. There's a green cover of this report. You can download the report, and I would very much encourage you to read it. And also look at the exhibits for the data for people from Greece and what they were thinking and planning. On the right-hand side, it's an image of our website. We built a dedicated website for this. we built a huge data tool that you're able to have access to. This is something, this is a little view of how the report looks, but you can really play around with the data. You can save a report, you can share it with your colleagues, you can export it to other formats, but I would really encourage you to get to learn this data tool. Interestingly, it also has a lot of information about expatriates. So you can look into it. When people left Greece, where did they go to? What was the reason that they left Greece? And what would be the key driver that would bring them back again? In terms of the outputs as well, I noticed that the willingness of people to learn the Greek language was higher than the global average as well, which I think is a very positive thing for the country. So there's one important question I need to answer, and that's how do you get access and how much does it cost? I'm delighted to tell you that this was an area I had a huge argument with BCG about. It was the only area we disagreed. They said we could make thousands of euros from it, and I didn't want to do it. I want to be a thought leader for what's going on in international talent mobility, and we strongly believe in partnership with Skywalker here in Greece and all of our other partners around the world that will provide this information to you free of charge. There's zero cost in accessing any of the reports and any of the data tool. The guys at Skywalker can help you navigate, make the registration and access the information. One final request is my colleague, Dr. and Professor Rainer Strack from Boston Consulting Group. He's the World Economic Forum expert on talent and people. In Davos next year to the world leaders like Obama and Merkel. He's presenting this world data set of the Global Talent Survey. He was also recently invited to make a TED Talk. I would very much encourage you to watch this TED Talk. He's a very enigmatic and charismatic character, but he portrays the data in a very interesting way, and it's really worthwhile 15 minutes of your life to invest to watch Rainer and the way that he portrays the data for you. Thank you very much indeed.